Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel Bangladesh to get the latest videos on ELT, TESOL, TEFL Linguistics and Applied Linguistics programs. This is MLR, Chairman IELTS and Head of Linguistics Bangladesh with ELT course Paper 5, Approaches and Methods of Language Teaching Part 1, Communicative Language Teaching Unit C. As a part of MA in ELT program, this lecture is on principles, features and characteristics of communicative language teaching or CLT approach. So, this video is very important and helpful for you. Learn English, buy English, keep watching my English medium videos. I maintain international standard in teaching English. Let's go. Introduction. Communicative language teaching improves communicative proficiency of all the skills including reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Gradually, it focuses on the grammatical, discourse, functional, sociolinguistic of communicative competence. It used to engage the learners in the pragmatic and functional use of language. Communicative approach comprises number 1, goal of effective communication, number 2, learning language by using it to communicate, number 3, focus on meaning and appropriate uses, number 4, focus both on fluency and accuracy, number 5, use of authentic materials to reflect real life situation, and number 6, integration of 4 skills: listening, reading, writing and speaking. Principles of communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching methodologies doesn't provide any specific method or theory of language teaching, but rather an approach that prioritizes communication. Historically, those methodologies come from alternative methods and approaches from the 1970s and 1980s. Methods such as the total physical response (TPR), natural approach, silent way, and suggestopedia contributed for the field of language teaching incorporated in other methods. The primary goal of CLT is for learners to develop communicative competence, which, according to Brand 2008, is the ability to interpret and enact appropriate social behaviors, and it requires the active involvement of the learner in the production of the target language. It also involves the following abilities. Number 1, linguistic competence, knowledge of grammar and vocabulary. Number 2, sociolinguistic competence, ability to say the appropriate thing in a social situation. Number 3, discourse competence, ability to start, enter, contribute to or end a conversation. Number 4, strategic competence, ability to communicate effectively and repair problems in communication. CLT methodologies have in common the fact that they are based on activities that require exchanging information and solving problems, communicating activities with real-world situations, and by taking into account the learner's background, needs, and goals. Dati and Long 2003 defined a series of principles that can be used as a guideline for implementing CLT. Number 1, using tasks as organizational principles has to do with the focus on meaning by giving learners a purpose to use grammar in a mentioned context or meaningful context. A task can be defined as an activity in class that involves learners' interactions with language and focuses on meaning rather than form. Number 2, promoting learning by doing refers to how new knowledge can be better retained in long-term memory if it is tied to real-world events and activities. Number 3, input needs to be rich since the learner needs to be exposed to the language from various sources to develop native-like language skills. That input, however, must be comprehensible to the students. Number 4, input needs to be meaningful, comprehensible, and elaborated. The assimilation of new knowledge heavily depends on how easily it can be attached to already existing knowledge. Number 5, promoting cooperative and collaborative learning by pairing or grouping students together so that they can work cooperatively on a task. This practice promotes communicative interactions in the target language. Number 6, a focus on form approach emphasizes a form-meaning connection, teaching grammar through communicative context. Number 7, providing error corrective feedback is important for the learner, but it is a long-term process. It depends not only on how the teacher provides the feedbacks, but also on individual learner factors. Number 8, finally, recognizing and respecting affective factors of learning is essential for teachers to understand and provide learners with an environment where they can feel motivated. The fact that CLT doesn't provide a specific method or curriculum allows it for the inclusion of strategic form, other theories, and adapt them to its goals. It seems to me that having an eclectic approach to language teaching, specifically if focused on real-life situation, is beneficial for both the teacher and the student, since it can also be adapted to different kinds of learners. However, as Brandt points out, the quality of the teaching also depends on the quality of the material, and the teacher needs to be able to identify what better suits with classroom. Major features and characteristics of communicative language teaching. Number 1, lesson should be the performing of some action. In CLT, the focus of every lesson or part of a lesson should be the performing of some action, learning how to do something, to communicate something which he or she could not do before learning the lesson. Learner can get answer to his or her question, that is, why is he or she learning a particular lesson or any linguistic term. The learner understands the importance of learning the same as it is going to help him or her in day-to-day communication. So here a learner understands and then acts. All these actions can be approached on a variety of different levels of sophistications and bearing them in mind throughout the teaching learning process. Number 2, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. One of the most significant features of communication is that it is a dynamic and developing phenomenon. In other words, it cannot easily be analyzed into component features without its nature being destroyed in the process. It is possible to identify various formal features of the way language is used communicatively, and this can be studied individually. But the ability to handle these elements in isolation is no indication of ability to communicate. What is needed is the ability to deal with strings of sentences and ideas and in the oral modes processed in real-life situations. Thus, a crucial feature of a communicative method is that it operates with stresses of language above the sentence level and operates with real language in real situation. Interestingly, these principles may lead to procedures which are themselves either synthetic or analytic. A synthetic procedure would involve students in learning forms individually and then practicing how to combine them. On the other hand, an analytic procedure would introduce complete interaction of text and focus for learning purposes on the way these are constructed. So, language used in the whole context is more useful than only studying the parts of it. Number 3, the processes are as important as the forms. A method which aims at developing the capacity of the learners to communicate in a second language will focus at repeating continuously until they are able to communicate well in a target language, so that the learners are able to practice the form of the target language, that is English, within a given framework. It simply means when the language is used for communication, the language forms are used for a process of communication. There are 3 such processes as follows. A. Information gap. Communication is part and parcel of every human being. When 2 or more people are conversing in day-to-day life, one may know something which is not known to the other. The purpose of the communication is to bridge this information gap. In classroom situation, pair work undertaken to complete an incomplete picture is the best example of transferring information, as each member of the pair has a part of total information and attempts to convey it verbally to the other. B. Choice. Another crucial feature of communication is that the learners have option both in terms of what they will say and more particularly how they will say it. From the point of view of the speaker, this means that he or she must choose the ideas which he or she wants to express with appropriate linguistic forms. Foreign language learners may face problems in making choice in this regard. C. Feedback. This process is implicit in the above 2 processes. When 2 persons take part in an interaction, there is normally some aim behind communication, and in what way other person reacts is evaluated in terms of that aim. So, the strategies involved in this process are important. CLT characteristics number 4, learning by doing. It is now widely accepted that education must be ultimately learner-centered more than the teacher-centered. The teacher may go on teach, but if the learner is not making any effort, then there is no point of learning and no learning occur at all. The teacher must involve the learner and must be judged in terms of its effects on him or her. Another consequence is that learning becomes to a large extent the learner's responsibility. The teacher helps, advises, teaches and guides. The learners themselves have to learn. The learner has to be involved in the activity. Only by practicing actually doing, the learners can learn to communicate. Number 5, mistakes are not always mistakes. While developing communicative ability of the learners, trivial mistakes of grammar or pronunciation doesn't matter as long as the learner gets his or her message across. In the initial stage of learning to communicate in a foreign language, mistakes are bound to happen. The learners commit mistakes because they are trying to do something which they have not mastered before. It means they are not really making mistake. It is if the teacher corrects each and everything at every level, the learners may lose their confidence of using the language for communications. Thank you.